On January 5th, 2024, Oscar Pistorius was released from a South African prison. It was a muted, quiet affair, a stark contrast from the public glare that engulfed his high-profile trial in 2014. If you don't remember Oscar Pistorius or simply forgot, he was the double amputee Paralympic athlete who competed while running in carbon fiber prosthetic blades. Not content to be relegated to the Paralympics, Pistorius accomplished an incredible feat, representing his home country of South Africa in the main Olympic Games. It was here at the 2012 London Olympic Games that he earned the nickname Blade Runner. But while Pistorius garnered international acclaim and became beloved the world over for the barriers he broke on the track, it was what happened off of it that made him the most famous and notorious athlete in Paralympic history. The court case drew headlines and interest from around the world. An international celebrity athlete who everyone in the world seemed to be rooting for was on trial for the murder of his famous girlfriend. Over the course of 7 months, engaged audiences took in the trial as Pistorius defended himself and nearly 40 witnesses testified. Pistorius' fall from grace was more than a tragedy. It was a global and national shock. His story sparked conversation across South Africa, forcing the country to control the hard truths about femicide, privilege, and justice. And Pistorius' celebrity status made it hard for people, especially his fans, to see him as a ruthless killer. I mean, how could a global icon who symbolized inspiration and overcoming obstacles commit such a horrible crime? Pistorius did shoot and kill his girlfriend. That much we know for sure. But was it a cold-blooded act of retaliation for troubles within their relationship, or a horrible tragedy born from confusion over an alleged home invader? And how does a physical disability, like the one that made Pistorius so well known around the world, factor into a case like this? Well, that's exactly what we're going to ask ourselves today. So hello everybody, and welcome to the fame and infamy of Blade Runner. Pistorius, as well as this case, were well known across the world in the early 2010s. But I guarantee a lot of you don't know the fine details of this case. And like I said, it was 2013, so a lot of you were probably like 4. Well, I'm happy to walk you through it and talk about a lot of the ins and outs that made this so controversial, not only because Pistorius was famous, but because of the legality around self-defense or believed self-defense, and how culpable is someone in a shooting. Can you believe that person in a shooting? So if all of that sounds interesting to you, then stick around after the ad as we talk about a complicated case, as well as the fame of the man that caused it in the first place. During the holiday season, it can be hard to worry about your health, especially when that worry includes an entire daily regimen. Thankfully, helping yourself has never been easier, thanks to today's sponsor, AG1. AG1 is the one-step daily health drink that includes things like your pre and probiotics, your superfoods, your multivitamins and multiminerals. And AG1 is just one simple step because all you need is 8 to 12 ounces of water and a spoonful of AG1 and you're good to go. AG1 just helps me feel better throughout the day. Poor diet tends to do the opposite of that. And when visiting relatives, getting year-end projects done, you need energy now more than ever. And in addition to AG1's new flavors like citrus, berry, and tropical, you can now get in on AGZ, which if AG1 is there to help you start your day, then AGZ is here to help you end it, as it's the perfect nighttime blend to help you fall asleep and then stay there. And right now you can get in on all of their products thanks to their holiday offer. So until the end of the year, if you head to the link in the description at drinkag1.com/Wendigang or scan the QR code, along with your first order, you'll receive a free welcome kit that includes things like a canister, a scoop, and a shaker bottle, AG1 and AGZ flavor samplers, a bottle of vitamin D3 and K2, and a free hat. That's right, a free hat. This one, as a matter of fact. Again, to get in on all of this, head to the link in the description at drinkag1.com/Wendigang or scan the QR code to get in on this incredible offer today. Thank you all for watching the ad. Thank you to AG1 for sponsoring the channel. Their link will be in the description, and we are now back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. Oscar Leonard Carl Pistorius was born on November 22nd, 1986. He was born to Hinda and Sheila Pistorius in Johannesburg, South Africa. Young Oscar was tragically different from other babies. He was born with fibular hemimelia, a birth defect where the outer leg bone, the fibula, is completely missing. Because it results in a shorter, thinner leg, fibular hemimelia can lead to a range of foot, ankle, and knee deformities. Pistorius's parents and doctors knew that his condition would prevent him from walking safely without a fibula, and after consideration, both of Pistorius' legs were amputated when he was 11 months old. Doctors cut his legs off just below the knee. Hinda and Sheila wanted their son to use prosthetics to give him mobility and to grow up with this being the norm for him. And I know what you may be thinking, that sounds kind of extreme for an 11-month-old to have both of their legs amputated. But you have to understand, given Pistorius' condition, he could never walk at least comfortably on those legs. So this decision allowed him to have mobility and to be used to it from a young age. The quick approach to their decision at such a young age proved to be the right one, as surgeons fit Pistorius with prosthetic legs just months after his amputation so he could learn to walk without interruption. Pistorius' first prosthetics, which were made of plaster and mesh and fitted with lycra skin, symbolized freedom. This was a defining moment in his life, and when he received them, he felt invincible. Pistorius' early childhood and family were crucial to shaping his personality and competitive nature that propelled him to excel in athletics in adulthood. Sheila was a big influence on her children. Oscar was born the middle child. He had an older brother, Carl, and a younger sister, Amy, who would find their lunchboxes filled with inspirational handwritten notes from their mother. One letter to Oscar read, quote, "The real loser is never the person who crosses the finish line last. The real loser is the person who sits on the side, the person who does not even try to compete." Although her son was different, Sheila treated all her children equally. She taught him not to use his disability as an excuse. If he fell, she let him get back up by himself. In fact, young Oscar didn't like being reminded he was different because in his mind, he wasn't. Quote from him, "Without knowing what it feels like to be normal, you feel normal." According to him, there were actually some advantages to having prosthetic legs. An emergency brake for go-karts, never worrying about a misplaced sock, or fear of burning your feet. Funny enough, according to BBC, quote, "Children at the beach marveled at his small, round footprints, while opponents on the rugby field who tackled him were left clutching an artificial limb." Outside of the home, Pistorius found another major source of inspiration. His teacher, Tessa Shellard. Shellard pushed Oscar to play in sports and went so far as to put Pistorius on the school's running team for a prestigious nationwide triathlon series. Even though he often finished in last place, Pistorius never gave up. During one particular biathlon race, his prosthetics were causing him so much pain, his friends ended up carrying him in. When Pistorius was 6 years old, his parents divorced, which forced Oscar and his siblings to live with his mother in a smaller house. Sheila had to get a job to support her new life situation, which gave her less time to tend to her middle child, who needed the most care. Because of this, Oscar's quality of medical care suffered as well, since the family could no longer afford a private prosthetist. He was sent to a public hospital so his legs could be adjusted as his bones grew. Pistorius was 9 years old when he got into his first fight over a girl, as young boys usually do. When he came home, Pistorius' father and grandfather taught him how to box. This would be foundational for what would come later, as this was the first time he learned how to defend himself. As he grew older, Pistorius was not afraid to lash out, usually verbally, at people who annoyed him. One notable example, which was captured live on TV, was at the 2012 London Paralympics, where he accused Brazilian runner Alan Oliveira of using illegal blades in the 200-meter final. As a young teenager, Pistorius was not a talented athlete. But when a design engineer, who was a family friend, gave Pistorius much lighter prosthetics, he started performing better in 10-kilometer races, as well as in rugby and water polo. And even though he made history as a sprinter, it was endurance running that first sparked his interest in the sport. But as Pistorius found his happy place on the field or in the water, his personal life was tinted by shades of darkness. And just like Pistorius would later come to realize about himself, his mother Sheila was well equipped at masking her pain. To the outside world, amongst friends and people at Pistorius' school, Sheila was a compassionate, good-humored, and genuinely cheerful person. But at night, away from the rest of the world, Sheila often drank herself to sleep. Her alcohol abuse was intermittent, yet it would be so severe at times that she would sleep through the night despite Oscar and his younger sister crying out for her. Carl, the oldest sibling, would have to step in and hide them from their mother's condition. But Sheila's drinking wasn't the only part of her character that left an incredible impact on Pistorius. According to him, his mother was terrified of crime, living in fear of a possible intruder breaking into the family home. If she heard something in the middle of the night, Sheila would rush to call the police, then wake her 3 children and take them into her bedroom and lock the door, waiting until the police came. Her fear wasn't completely unjustified, however. When Sheila divorced her husband, the new neighborhood she and her children moved into was in a rougher part of town, and early on, they experienced several break-ins at the house. Sheila's solution was to keep a loaded pistol under her pillow every night when she went to bed. Her silent suffering persisted for 8 years. 8 years of worrying about another intruder while struggling to keep a roof over her family's head. And it was around this time that Sheila Pistorius fell ill. After learning that she had a badly damaged liver, Sheila's doctors mistakenly diagnosed her with hepatitis and prescribed her medicine to treat it. When she had an adverse reaction to the drugs, she was quickly taken to the hospital and her health rapidly declined. And in March of 2002, Sheila died at the age of 43. At their mother's funeral, everyone cried except Oscar. When he went to school after her burial, he told very few classmates what happened. Rather than display it publicly, Pistorius buried his grief in sports. It was the only thing that distracted him from his loss. But only a year after his mother's funeral, another tragedy struck. Oscar shattered his knee playing rugby. This injury came at an unfortunate time, as Pistorius was busy working hard on his fitness and conditioning. In fact, he was so locked in on his physical training that for 6 months, one of his trainers didn't even realize he had no legs. Which I know that's like a statement of how hard he was going and how impressive he was, but I think it's equally, if not more so, a statement to the lack of awareness on that trainer. Because, come on, man. Your job is a physical trainer, and it took you half a year to realize this guy physically does not have legs. Are you working with your eyes closed? Pistorius boxed, jump roped, and lifted just like the rest of the athletes, doing everything at the same pace as the others could. While its timing seemed like a disadvantage, the injury would be somewhat of a blessing in disguise, as the long-distance runner was advised to take up sprinting as a way to help his knee joint recover, which I'm sure that came way after his knee had healed and he was now in like the rehabilitation phase. So that's why they said he should sprint. But it's funnier to imagine he shattered his knee and the same dude who didn't realize he didn't have legs came up to him and was like, you should try running like really hard and fast right now. Around this time, that same family friend who had equipped a young Pistorius with lighter prosthetics invited the injured Pistorius to the US to try a different set of prosthetics. This set was the Flex Foot Cheetah Blades, which were manufactured by a company in Iceland. With this, Pistorius was off to the races, literally. Within a month of taking up sprinting, he ran his first 100-meter race on January 28, 2004. His first competitive race was for his high school, Pretoria Boys School. Pistorius came in first with a time that was faster than any other time a double amputee had run before, 11.72 seconds. The existing Paralympic record at the time was 12.2 seconds, a fact that his father had discovered and passed on to Oscar. This was a turning point for Pistorius, and from then on, he began his journey to become the fastest man on no legs. 8 months after that first race, Pistorius competed in the 2004 Summer Paralympics in Athens, where he came third overall in the 100-meter event for single below-knee amputees, which is classified as T44. Despite being classified as a T43 or a double below-the-knee amputee, Pistorius frequently competed against T44 athletes due to the lack of T43 competitors in some events. In other words, there's a lot more runners with one missing leg than there are runners with two missing legs, so Oscar, even though he had two, would run against the one missing legs when he could. And although he fell in the 200-meter preliminary round, he qualified for the final, which he eventually won in a world record time of 21.97 seconds. But his victory was not without immediate controversy, a recurring theme Pistorius would face throughout his career. In this case, for single amputees, the vertical length of their prosthetic leg would, of course, depend on the length of their natural leg. For Pistorius and other double below-knee amputee athletes, they would have their leg length be determined by a prosthetist, which, if you haven't put together yet, is the guy that makes prosthetics. I know, hard to connect those two. So because of this, a lot of athletes believe that Pistorius was racing tall, or in other words, his prosthetic legs added about 2 inches to his height. While that may be fine to do on your Tinder profile, that is not great in competitions, because the taller you are, that means you have a longer stride length, which is a key component to speed. I mean, take it all the way. Imagine if he had like 100-foot prosthetics. He could take a single step and win. Just like take that math down a lot to where it's like 5'11", or if he's adding a couple inches, 6'1", and then that same thing applies. It's not as extreme as a 100-foot tall prosthetic, but That image makes me laugh. Several of his competitors saw this as an unfair advantage. His achievements at these games, as well as the controversy, made Pistorius first known to the world. It wouldn't be long before Pistorius competed against non-disabled athletes. In 2005, he finished 6th in the able-bodied 400-meter race at the South African Championships. And on July 13, 2007, he finished 2nd in the 400-meter race at Rome's Golden Gala, another able-bodied event. Pistorius wanted to compete in more non-disabled events and had set his sights on the 2008 Summer Olympics in China. But sadly for him, in 2008, he was not selected by the South African Olympic Committee. Nevertheless, when Pistorius did compete, he broke records. At the Paralympic World Cup in 2005, he won both the 100 and 200 meter races, and he beat his previous 200 meter world record. In March of 2007, Pistorius set a disability sports world record for the 400 meters at just 46.56 seconds. That same year, he held the world record for the 100 and 200 meter events with times of 10.91 and 21.58 respectively. But just as Pistorius was outrunning his competitors on the track, he stumbled into a new roadblock off the track. The IAAF, or now simply known as World Athletics, is the international governing body on sports related to track and field, sprinting, running, etc. In March of 2007, the world governing body for athletics banned Oscar's prosthetics and the use of, quote, any technical device that incorporates springs, wheels, or any other element that provides a user with an advantage over another athlete not using that device. Although the IAAF stated that the ban was not targeted towards Pistorius, the timing was suspicious. I mean, they just put up a rule saying you can't have like mechanical contraptions that help you run faster, and there's no one else on the track with giant cartoonish springs on the bottom of their shoes, I think. Furthermore, to determine whether Pistorius did indeed have an unfair advantage, the organizations used high-definition cameras to monitor his races at the aforementioned Golden Gala in Rome. When the organization sent Pistorius for a series of tests with a biomechanics professor, the results didn't favor the South African. According to The Guardian, Pistorius's prosthetic blade used 25% less energy than able-bodied runners at the same speed. As for the prosthetics brought into question, the J-shaped carbon fiber blades, the FlexFoot Cheetahs, had been used by amputee runners since the late 1990s. But none of those runners moved as quickly as Pistorius did. To put it into context, at the time, Pistorius's personal best of 45.07 seconds in the 400 meter was nearly, quote, 2 seconds slower than the world record mark of 43.18 set by American Michael Johnson, a considerable margin in elite running where tenths and hundredths of a second matter. In other words, while 2 seconds is a big difference in a race between two different places, it is a suspiciously small distance between the able-bodied world record and Pistorius' personal best. From Pistorius' perspective, he saw himself like every other sprinter, a point of view instilled in him since childhood. He was like everyone else on the track, trying to generate speed while being as efficient in his movements as possible, which is difficult to do without an ankle joint. It's also important to note that prosthetic legs do not assist in lifting one's knee higher or maintain proper form while tired. In fact, when running a race, Pistorius was at a disadvantage as it would take him longer to accelerate to full speed. Also, his blades were designed for sprinting, not standing still, so post-race, he shifted his weight from foot to foot in order to stay upright, as he couldn't easily balance his weight while standing still. Pistorius argued his case and appealed IAAF's decision to the Court of Arbitration for Sports in Switzerland, or the CAS. Along with an MIT professor and a team of biomechanics and physiology experts, Pistorius proved that the cheetahs, quote, did not help Pistorius conserve energy or give him a mechanical advantage when sprinting. Pistorius presented his findings and the court reversed the ban. Okay, a couple things to note. For one, I understand some of the suspicion because everyone else is running and there's one guy that looks like he has these giant super springs on his legs who is winning. But again, these kind of legs have been used since the 90s. A lot of people make a lot of money checking this stuff out to make sure everything's up to code, say they are equitable to the amount of professionalism and exertion needed for regular runners. So by all accounts, it should be okay. And the other thing is that guy that said he was exerting 25% less than the other people he was competing against, what is he talking about? How do you watch back footage of a race and say that guy is operating with 25% less exertion? Like, is he watching the videotapes and being like, oh, clearly we can see that he is 25% less winded and exacerbated as he wins the race? Like, yeah, that's what guys who win races do. They were better at running than everyone else. Anyway, while Oscar didn't qualify for the 2008 Summer Olympics, even his non-participation, like everything else in his career, came with controversy. In July of 2008, a leading official of the IAAF said Pistorius should not be allowed to compete in the 400-meter relay because of safety concerns, as he would risk the physical safety of himself and other athletes if he ran in the main pack of the relay, since the race, except for the first leg, is a run without lanes, which now it just sounds like the IAAF is gunning for him personally. Like, he starts running with spring legs and they make a rule where it's like, no one gets to have giant springs on their shoes or have legs in the shape of springs. And then when that decision gets turned over, they're like, he's not allowed to run with a group because those legs look sharp and pointy and someone could get hurt. He could stab someone with his leg. And most importantly, they're scary. We'll get to the murder charge in a minute. I'm just heated right now. Pistorius threatened legal action if the IAAF did not immediately advise the South African Federation and Olympic Committee that they had no objection to him competing at the Beijing Olympics. Given all the tension between Pistorius and the IAAF, Pistorius ran in the 2008 Summer Paralympics in Beijing like he had a rocket-powered chip on his shoulder. Undoubtedly motivated, Pistorius took out his frustration on the track, winning gold in the 100-meter, the 200-meter, in the 200-meter he set another Paralympic record, and the 400-meter, where he set a world record time of 47.49 seconds. Pistorius made it clear to the world he could run with the best of them, and with this, he set his sights on the 2012 Summer Olympics in London. By this point, the Blade Runner was one of the world's most famous Paralympic athletes, who brought the sport to a more mainstream audience, as well as the spotlight on himself. In 2011, Pistorius was named one of GQ's Men of the Year. Naturally, when someone starts to reach international acclaim, detractors aren't too far behind. Pistorius' determination to compete in the Olympics suggested to some that he regarded Paralympic sport as second-rate. For Pistorius, it was a matter of fairness. He believed, quote, it was unfair to exclude disabled athletes from taking part in the Olympics if they were good enough. He didn't consider himself a Paralympic athlete or an Olympic athlete. He was just an athlete. But as sponsorship deals and media appearances grew, Pistorius began to change. In 2011, he stormed out of a BBC radio interview after the interviewer asked if his participation in able-bodied major championships might be seen by South African authorities and the IAAF as, quote, an inconvenient embarrassment.
Funny a thought. I mean, some people regard you, no doubt, as an inspiration to Paralympic athletes, no question about that. But it might also be said, I suppose, that you're an inconvenient embarrassment to the South African authorities and the IAAF because you're taking them into uncharted ethical waters here. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
Oh, I think that's an insult to me, and I think this interview is over.
It's not expressed as an insult.
No, but that is an insult. Thank you very much.
This was based on the premise that these governing bodies were basically forced to allow him to take part in able-bodied events by the court's ruling 3 years ago. I understand what the interviewer was implying. They were saying, does the IAAF see it as embarrassing to them that they can't tell you what to do because you have a court order that you get to run in the main races? That's what they were asking. But the unfortunate wording of embarrassment made it sound like they were asking Pistorius if the country of South Africa is embarrassed that a Paralympic runs with non-Paralympics. To this question, Pistorius replied, quote, I think that's an insult to me, and I think this interview is over. Which again, given a misunderstanding of the question, could be justified. This new fiery side of Pistorius would continue in London at the 2012 Summer Olympics. But first, he had to qualify. To help him prepare, Pistorius changed his physique. He started 2011 slimmer, having reduced his upper body muscle mass to save weight and become more streamlined when he ran. The start to the year saw the Blade Runner winning 3 titles in New Zealand and 2 events at the BT Paralympic World Cup in May, proving to the world that he was indeed the fastest Paralympic sprinter. During that summer, Pistorius competed in several non-disabled races, and it would be in Italy where he set a personal best in the 400 meter at 45.07 seconds. This was monumental in his quest for the Olympics, as his excellent finish was one of the requirements needed to qualify for the games. Following year, in July of 2012, the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee selected Pistorius for the Olympic team in the 400-meter and 4x400-meter relay races. At the 2012 Summer Olympics in London, Pistorius became the first double amputee to compete in the Olympic track and field events. Although it should be noted that the first amputee to compete in any Olympics was actually a gymnast named George Iser in 1904. He won 6 medals in one day, all on a wooden prosthetic leg. So Pistorius was not the first leg amputee, but he was the first double leg amputee. In Pistorius' first event, the 400-meter race, the South African placed second in his 5-man heat. His performance allowed him to advance to the semifinals, where he finished last with a time of 46.54 seconds, which was not enough to qualify him for the final. In Pistorius' second event, the 4x400-meter relay, one of his teammates fell before reaching Pistorius, who was slotted to run the third leg. However, the South African team appealed to the IAAF and passed into the final after it was decided that a Kenyan athlete had interfered with the South African runner. And in the final, Pistorius ran the final leg of the relay at 45.9 seconds, and the team finished 8 out of 9. In the closing ceremony, Pistorius was selected to carry the South African flag. To the public, Pistorius' image couldn't have been more inspirational. By competing on the world's biggest stage, he, quote, elevated public awareness of limb loss, mobility technology, and the importance of inclusive design in sports medicine. I remember being 12 years old while he was competing and seeing him on the news. You know, you're a kid and you have a limited view of the world, and you have an idea in your head of what a prosthetic looks like or what a disability looks like. And then you see this guy competing in the Olympics and it opens up your worldview, changes your mind. Pistorius symbolized hope, hard work, and positivity in the face of adversity. However, those close to him noticed a change. At the 2012 Summer Paralympics, which were held in August after the London Games, Pistorius was once again selected to carry the flag for South Africa, this time at the opening ceremony. He competed in his usual 100, 200, and 400 meter events, as well as in the 4x100 meter relay. In the 200 meter finals, he was defeated by Brazilian runner Alan Oliveira. The Blade Runners' bid for a third straight gold medal had ended, and Pistorius, unhappy with silver, did what was done to him just a few years ago. He accused the 20-year-old Oliveira of, quote, gaining an unfair edge by using lengthened blades. Considering Pistorius spent several years trying to convince authorities that his prosthetic blades did not influence his athletic capabilities, the irony was not lost on many. Before the Summer Olympics, Pistorius had highlighted the abilities of his fellow athletes rather than their disabilities. But now, within just a few minutes of losing, he, quote, shifted the spotlight back onto the advantage technology might provide. In addition to the outbursts, there were signs that something was wrong. Quote from BBC, another South African Paralympian, Arnu Foray, told a journalist he had to change rooms in the athletes' village because Pistorius was shouting on the phone so much. Because Pistorius was now in high demand from the media and sponsors, some believed his lifestyle and image had changed. During this period, Pistorius had earned a reported $2 million a year in endorsements from his sponsors, which included Nike, Oakley, and Thierry Mugler perfumes. Thierry Mugler? I'm so uneducated. Sure. Thierry Mugler. There you go. People in Pistorius' circle, who had a financial incentive in the South Africans' popularity, looked the other way, not wanting to rock the boat and stop the cash flow. One journalist who first met Pistorius around 2002 recalled how he was so impressed with the young athlete's confidence and charisma. But in a 2012 meeting, Pistorius was a totally different man. Instead of his usual warm self, Pistorius came off cold and a bit standoffish. Not wanting to spoil the image of a disabled national hero, the South African media did its best to bury any red flags from Pistorius' past. February of 2009, Pistorius had slammed his speedboat into a pier, breaking his jaw, several ribs, and even damaging his eye socket. He was taken to a hospital at the time and underwent facial reconstructive surgery. At the time, doctors downplayed his injuries. Quote, 3 days later, local news reported that police found alcohol bottles inside the submerged boat, but the police never tested the sprinter's blood and authorities declined to prosecute. This recklessness would soon come to light after the Olympics, as the stresses surrounding the games took their toll. According to one sports writer, Jonathan McEvoy, Pistorius swore profusely at the gym and would often storm out mid-workout. The writer observed, quote, it seemed as though he survived on energy drinks and caffeine pills. Which, hey, me and him can get along there. Am I right, brother? Up top. This guy killed someone. I probably shouldn't be so jovial. I apologize. McAvoy also asked Pistorius about the guns he had in his bedroom. There was a blank pistol on the table next to Pistorius' bed, and under the window, a, quote, sinister-looking machine gun. Pistorius responded to McAvoy by saying, quote, protection, brother. Hey, what's the deal with the gun on the table? Protection. Which, again, obviously, I don't have a problem with. But more so, why do you have to just have it out and make people uncomfortable who walk into your room and then you're like vague? And also, what does a sinister looking machine gun look like? Can I see it? Pistorius struggled with insomnia and had difficulty falling asleep, probably in part due to the caffeine pills. Quote from Vanity Fair, often he would rise in the middle of the night and go with his gun and a couple of boxes of ammunition to the shooting range. As for his collection, Vanity Fair says, quote, 1 pistol license for self-defense, and had applied for license for 3 shotguns, a rifle, and 2 more pistols. In November of 2011, he posted on Twitter, quote, had a 96% headshot over 300 meters from 50 shots. Bam! Accompanying to this post was a picture of himself firing at a range in Italy, where he sometimes trained. Which I've also posted pictures of myself at the range. Look, all this stuff, if he never shot anyone, would be perfectly fine. No one would care. But as with most great things in life, this does not play well to a courtroom. Pistorius enjoyed putting his new, lavish lifestyle on social media. After all, what good's a victory lap if the world can't see it? Pistorius used Twitter to chronicle his wealth and luxury purchases, which escalated from seemingly normal to more extreme. Pistorius had a pit bull, a bull terrier, and 2 white tigers. Yes, tigers, which he eventually sold to a Canadian zoo once they reached 400 pounds. He lived a fast life on the track as well as off it. There was a collection of fast cars, one of which was a $300,000 McLaren Spider. As for his dating life, Oscar was connected to various blondes over the months and years, his preferred type. And on November 4th of 2012, he met one who would change his life forever. Oscar met Riva Steenkamp at Kyalami Racetrack in Johannesburg, South Africa. Both were invited separately, and after being introduced to each other, Pistorius was immediately attracted to Steenkamp. Pistorius asked her to be his date later that evening to the South African Sports Awards. When Steenkamp told her friend that she now needed a nice dress, she told her that she was going, quote, with Oscar as friends. Apparently, one night was all it took for Pistorius, but for Steenkamp, her attraction to him wasn't instant. Gina Myers, a close friend of Steenkamp, said that Oscar became overwhelming. Even Myers' father, who was as protective of Steenkamp as his own 2 daughters, told Pistorius, quote, if you want this girl, you need to give her some space. Pistorius didn't listen, and instead did the opposite. He was around her orbit all the time. Eventually, his persistence paid off, and once their relationship progressed from casual dating, Myers never saw Pistorius again. Steenkamp and Pistorius were the new it couple, and everyone wanted to see them succeed, especially since Pistorius was known for his turbulent relationship with the women he dated. In his book, he referred to a particularly nasty argument here and a very fiery relationship there regarding his love life. Much like his life in general, and on the track especially, his relationships were passionate, explosive, and move fast. But with Steenkamp, things appeared to be somewhat different than Oscar's previous flings. They appeared to be fully in love and approached the relationship with wise caution. When an editor of the UK-based celebrity magazine Heat wanted the couple photographed for a cover issue, they refused. Their relationship was new, and they wanted to enjoy their time together before thrusting themselves into the celebrity circus. Moreover, Steenkamp wasn't ready to be known for just being Pistorius' next blonde. She had talents and ambitions of her own. Born in Cape Town on August 19th of 1983, Riva Steenkamp's parents were Barry, a horse trainer, and June, who was from England. She had half-siblings from both of her parents' previous marriages, and when the family moved to Port Elizabeth, Steenkamp, quite the academic, made the decision to pursue law as a career. She graduated from the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University with a Bachelor of Law degree in 2005. After college, Steenkamp worked as a paralegal and a model, and applied to the bar in 2011. Hoping to become a lawyer by the time she turned 30, as for modeling, Steenkamp appeared in FHM as a cover girl and was the first face of Avon Cosmetics in South Africa. On television, Steenkamp worked as a live presenter for fashion TV in South Africa and starred in numerous televised commercials. In 2012, she was a celebrity contestant on the BBC lifestyle show Baking Made Easy. She was an incredibly smart and talented woman whose success was self-evident. Yet for all of her many accomplishments, her relationship with Pistorius seemed to follow her. which increasingly was seen as a negative. A tattoo artist who tattooed the word lioness on Steenkamp's ankle told her, quote, "Doesn't matter how famous he is, his name is not good around people on the street." You know how there can be a celebrity, like an actor, who maybe you like the movies they're in or you like their performances, but then you hear one story about how they acted on set or off of set and it ruins your opinion of them forever. That's what was happening with Oscar to everyone he interacted with. January of 2013, Steenkamp's cousin, Kim Martin, recalls asking her if she was happy in her relationship with Pistorius. There was a smile and hesitation in her response. She said yes, but there was something she could not talk about to Martin while Pistorius was in the bathroom at the restaurant they were at. Steenkamp told her cousin, quote, "We'll talk about it another time." But they never did. That same month, Pistorius and 3 other people were at Tasha's restaurant in Johannesburg when one of them, Darren Fresco, passed his firearm to Pistorius and told him, quote, "I'm one up," which meant there was a bullet in the gun's chamber. What followed was absolutely bizarre. A loud bang and complete silence. One of the people at the table, professional boxer Kevin Lorena, looked down at his foot and there was a hole in the floor. The bullet had grazed his toe. Pistorius had discharged his weapon inside of the restaurant. Pistorius apologized, then asked Fresco to take the blame, which Fresco did. According to Pistorius, he said he did not hear Fresco's warning about the bullet and was checking the chamber when it was accidentally fired. This incident would be later used in Pistorius' prosecution to show his trigger-happy nature. And also, that's not how you check a chamber. Sure, that might fly with people who don't know guns and think they're just magic boxes that explode every now and then. But if you're going to check the chamber, your fingers should never be on the trigger. And checking the chamber doesn't make the gun go off. He was probably drunk and thought it would be funny to just shoot it into the ground. And much like his mother, almost certainly because of her, Pistorius was obsessed with security. He had recently bought a new home in Pretoria's private community of Silverwoods Country Estate, equipped with numerous safety features. And in the months to come, this house would find itself under intense scrutiny, as bedrooms, bathrooms, doors, and even portable fans would be poured over in great detail. That's because on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013, Reva Steenkamp was shot 4 times and killed. She died at the age of 29 before her dreams of becoming a lawyer could ever come true. So let's talk about the night that would be brought into question for years to come. On February 13th, one day before her death, Steenkamp was practicing a speech that she had planned to give the following day to students at Sandown High School. Her speech centered around rape awareness, and Steenkamp's words would commemorate a, quote, 17-year-old girl named Anine Boyson who had been gang raped outside of Cape Town. In her speech, Steenkamp talked about growing up on a farm with little money and her own experiences of being in an emotionally abusive relationship. Through modeling, Steenkamp regained her self-esteem. In her speech, she, quote, urged the students to realize the importance of being heard and realizing their value. That evening, Steenkamp drove her Mini Cooper to Silverwoods Country Estate, which had seen a burglary in 2009 and a robbery in 2011. As a response to this, the gated community had put up a solid electrified security wall. In fact, on the night of the shooting, it would seem like the property was so safe that Pistorius was sleeping with the balcony doors open. In the early hours of the following morning, Pistorius got up to move 2 fans off his balcony. This balcony was adjacent to the bedroom. While he was moving the fans, he said that he heard the sound of a bathroom window being closed. The bathroom window that you can see on the image is located in the red box. Pistorius feared that an intruder might have used a ladder that some of the workers had left at the base of the house to enter through this upstairs window. He then said he grabbed his 9mm handgun from under his bed, quote, to protect his girlfriend and himself from the intruder. Because he had gotten up from bed, Pistorius claimed to have not been wearing his prosthetic legs as he went to investigate the bathroom and the supposed source of the noise. Pistorius called out to Steenkamp to call the police, and in court, Pistorius testified that he believed his girlfriend was still in bed. Pistorius said he heard another noise from inside the bathroom and fired 4 bullets through the door. During his trial, Pistorius testified that, after firing his gun, he realized Steenkamp was not in bed. He fastened on his blades and kicked down the locked door. He also went to grab his cricket bat, on which his name was inscribed, and use it to hit the door open. What was behind the door was grisly. One of the 3 bullets that hit Steenkamp was on her head. When first responders arrived, Pistorius had carried Steenkamp down a flight of stairs, and they found him screaming and sobbing. riddled with grief. Pistorius was taken into police custody, and on February 15th, the South African superstar was formally charged with murder in a Pretoria court. The detective who was called in to investigate the crime was Hilton Botha, a 24-year-old veteran of the South African Police Service. Botha and Pistorius had history, as Botha had arrested the young athlete back in 2009 for an assault, quote, after he had been accused of slamming a door so hard on a female guest at one of his parties that it caused severe injuries. Pistorius denied the allegation and the charge was dropped. So Botha knew that this dude had a history of hurting women, something that certainly made everyone suspicious of his story now that this woman has wound up dead. On February 19th, Pistorius' bail hearing began. The chief magistrate of Pretoria had charged Pistorius with a Schedule 6 criminal offense, which is used in some of the most serious crimes, including premeditated murder. Any release on bail required exceptional circumstances. In court, Botha testified about the night he was called to the scene, in which neighbors told him, quote, what sounded like an argument in Pistorius' house between 2 and 3 a.m. Witnesses claimed to hear a woman scream, a gun being fired, then another scream, followed by more shots. The prosecution used this testimony to claim that Pistorius had put on his prosthetic legs, walked across his bedroom to the bathroom, and intentionally shot Steenkamp through the door. If this were true, then the time it took for Oscar to do so would mean the alleged murder was premeditated. See, Oscar is arguing that he didn't put on his prosthetics. He thought someone had broken in through the bathroom window in the middle of the night, so he shot through the door. But if the police can prove that there was an argument right beforehand and he knew she was in the bathroom and he did take the time to put on his prosthetics, well, that changes the case. Botha argued at the hearing that Pistorius was a flight risk due to offshore bank accounts and his house in Italy. The defense denied that he owned such a house, and the fact that Pistorius was a global superstar with prosthetic legs would make it very difficult for him to flee without being recognized. The magistrate was not convinced by Botha and released Pistorius on bail, which was fixed at 1 million rand, which at the time was equivalent to about 113 US dollars. The defense attorney's cross-examination of Botha put the prosecution on its heels. Questions thrown at the detective challenged how the witnesses that he had interviewed could have known it was Steenkamp and Pistorius who had been heard arguing, not their other neighbors. An autopsy had confirmed Steenkamp had an empty bladder at the time of her death, consistent with Pistorius' statement that she had used the toilet in the middle of the night. According to a tweet from a BBC reporter, Botha was on the ropes, floundering. But it was about to get even worse for him, because on the first day of testimony, Botha received a call from another officer who told Botha that a 2-year-old case against him, since withdrawn, was now being reopened. In 2011, Botha and some other officers were investigating a murder when a minibus taxi driver sped straight at them. Forcing the officers to flee from the road, Botha shot at the tires when the driver tried to make a run for it. There were 7 people aboard the taxi whose lives were put at risk. So, just as he was going to be a key part of the trial, Botha faced the reinstated 7 counts of attempted murder. This coming from allegations that the taxi was not actually coming at them and instead Botha and his colleagues were just drunk. Because of this controversy, Botha was removed from the Pistorius case the following day. As for Pistorius, his attorneys were able to appeal the restrictions, which included no alcohol consumption and not returning to his house. On March 3rd, 2014, Oscar Pistorius' trial began. Since the jury system in South Africa was abolished during the apartheid era, the trial was assigned to a judge and 2 assessors to help evaluate the case and reach a verdict. Pistorius was facing the murder charge, in addition to illegal possession of ammunition and 2 charges of firing a gun in a public space. One of the latter charges was the previously discussed incident at the restaurant, weeks before Steenkamp's death. The other was in 2012, where Pistorius allegedly shot his gun out of the open sunroof of a car, which, considering what he did in a bar at a guy's foot, I'm willing to believe. The prosecution presented testimony from a neighbor who heard a man and woman arguing for an hour, followed by the sound of a woman screaming, and then 4 loud bangs. The scream preceding the gunfire suggested that Pistorius knew who he was shooting. Steenkamp was found with food in her stomach when she died, which meant that she had eaten within 2 hours of her death, which was at 3 a.m. This contradicts Pistorius' previous claim that they had gone to bed at 10, 5 hours before she died. According to the prosecution, the couple had been arguing in their bedroom. during which time a frightened Steenkamp fled from Pistorius to lock herself in the toilet room with her mobile phone. They claimed an angry Pistorius demanded entry into the bathroom, and when Reva refused to open the door, Pistorius tried to break through the door using the cricket bat, followed by gunshots. During the bail hearing, Pistorius claimed to have fired at an intruder, but in court, he said he fired by mistake. Of course, the prosecution used this to say that Pistorius' testimony was unreliable. One of the witnesses told the court that he saw a light on in Pistorius' bathroom as the shots were being fired, which goes against Pistorius' claim that the lights were off. There were also 2 iPhones and 2 BlackBerry phones, which belonged to both Pistorius and Steenkamp, that were found on the bathroom floor. Prosecutor claimed that Steenkamp had phones with her because she was trying to escape. Pistorius' team insisted that Pistorius and Steenkamp had gone to bed at 10 p.m. Because of a shoulder injury, Pistorius slept on the left-hand side of the bed, under which was his 9mm pistol. And in the middle of the night, Pistorius woke up to a hot and humid room. At this point, said the defense, Steenkamp was already awake, unbeknownst to Pistorius. As Pistorius opened the balcony door to move the fan inside to cool down the room, Steenkamp went into the bathroom, which Pistorius was again unaware of. Again, this is all according to the defense. Not only had he not heard her, but he also couldn't see that the bed was empty because it was, quote, pitch black. Pistorius then heard a noise from the bathroom and grabbed his gun, telling Steenkamp to call the police as he exited the bedroom on his 2 stumps. According to defense, Pistorius moved through the hallway, using the wall for support, and saw a bathroom window open. However, the door to the toilet room was closed, which again, from the photo of the house, you would be able to see the bathroom window wide open from the window next to the bathroom. However, the door to the toilet room was closed, so if it was an intruder, they would have entered through the bathroom window and locked themselves in the toilet room with the door closed. Which, to clarify, there was a distinct toilet room within the bathroom. In other words, there was a door that covered up just the toilet from the rest of the bathroom itself. So thinking that someone was coming out of the toilet room, Pistorius fired 4 shots in quick succession through the bathroom door. Pistorius then went back into the bedroom and felt around in the dark for his girlfriend. Unable to find her, the runner then checked the floor and even behind the curtains before realizing that she was in the bathroom. Why would you check behind the curtains? Is she 5? Pistorius then moved back into the bathroom and, realizing the door was locked, went back to the bedroom to put on his prosthetic legs and to retrieve his cricket bat. He returned to the bathroom and broke down the door, where he found Steenkamp by the toilet, unconscious. He tried moving her body, eventually carrying her downstairs, then made a 24-second phone call to Johann Stander, his estate manager. Pistorius then called a security guard who alerted authorities. Police and paramedics arrived soon after, as the Olympian stayed in the kitchen, where a paramedic told him Steenkamp was dead. Which already a lot of questions, right? For one, even if we buy the whole thing that he was so paranoid he just heard someone in the bathroom he started shooting, if you live with someone else for any amount of time and you hear someone in the bathroom in the middle of the night, I feel like you're going to assume it's them. It's not like the first time they've ever used the bathroom after dark. And also, what's with that 24-second phone call to his estate manager before he contacted the police? That's kind of weird, right? On July 8th, the defense closed its case, arguing that Pistorius should not have faced murder charges, but rather culpable homicide charges, which are based on negligence. Throughout the trial, questions regarding Pistorius' prosthetics, the couple's relationship, and the runner's psychological state were brought up and put on display in front of the world. The trial was broadcast through live audio, and some of the portions were broadcasted on television. During the bail hearing, the prosecution claimed Pistorius had been wearing his prosthetic legs during the shooting of Steenkamp to support their argument of premeditated murder. But during the trial, a ballistics analyst testified that, based on the location and trajectory of the bullet holes, the shooter was most likely not wearing prosthetic legs. Which, I don't know if y'all know this, but you can hold a gun like this. You can hold it like this. And that would probably be about the same height as someone without prosthetics. More important was the fact that Pistorius and Steenkamp had only been dating for 3 months before she was killed. Details of their relationship were brought into question, including messages the couple had sent each other on WhatsApp. Most were normal and pointed towards a loving and caring relationship, but some messages from Steenkamp accused Pistorius of being jealous and possessive. She wrote in a long message, quote, "I'm scared of you sometimes, of how you snap at me. You've picked on me incessantly. I was not flirting with anyone today, and I feel sick that you suggested that. You do everything to throw tantrums. I'm certainly very unhappy and sad." While these paint a picture of a potentially volatile partner, something Pistorius was known to be at times, all seemed well between the couple right before her death. Just a few hours before the shooting, Steenkamp sent Pistorius a message saying how he was an amazing person with many blessings and that he was more than cared for. There was even a Valentine's Day card she wrote for him that read, quote, "Roses are red, violets are blue," and inside she wrote, "I think today is a good day to tell you that I love you." But of course, who knows what kind of fight could have been started at 1 a.m. During the trial, Pistorius underwent psychiatric and psychological assessments. It was revealed that he had an anxiety disorder that came from his turbulent childhood. With the death of his mother, and given his disability, Pistorius would probably fight a threat rather than take flight from it. With both sides presenting their cases, dozens of witness testimonies, and the mental assessments having been conducted, a decision was finally made. On September 12, 2014, Pistorius was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of culpable homicide. The trial judge disagreed with the prosecution's argument that Pistorius should have foreseen that by firing 4 shots through a door into a toilet room, the person inside could be killed. In South Africa, this is categorized as common law murder, in which if the accused knows they might kill someone but still goes ahead with their course of action, then it's considered murder. The judge arguing that instead of a knowing murder, it was instead self-defense. He was also found guilty of reckless endangerment with a firearm for the restaurant incident and not guilty of the charges surrounding the sunroof incident. The verdict's reaction was so loud on social media that the judge, who was already given police protection from the beginning of the trial, received threats and personal attacks by fans of Pistorius who didn't agree with it. Pistorius' sentencing came on October 21st. A maximum of 5 years, part of which would be served under correctional supervision after serving a minimum of 10 months in prison. Less than a week after the sentencing, the prosecution team announced that they were appealing both the verdict and the sentence. In October of 2015, the Prison Parole Board confirmed Pistorius would be released on house arrest in mid-October, after serving a 1/6 of his sentence, and Pistorius was released on October 19th, 2015. But on November 3rd, everything changed for Pistorius. South Africa's Supreme Court of Appeal heard the case from the prosecution, who argued that the identity of the person behind the toilet door was not relevant, since the defense claimed Pistorius believed his life was under threat when he fired his gun. Under South African law, you cannot just shoot. You first need to determine that the threat to your life is real and there is no other way to eliminate the threat before you fire. In other words, it shouldn't matter if Oscar thought it was his girlfriend or a home intruder or Santa Claus. The fact that he didn't ID who was on the other side of the door is the problem. On October 3rd, 2015, the court overturned the verdict made during the trial. Since Pistorius used a gun and underwent extensive firearms training, it was on Pistorius to realize that whoever was in the toilet room might die. So this time, the court found him guilty of murder. Pistorius was sentenced to 6 years in prison, which is an insane sentence for murder. The prosecution had called for 15 years, and 1 year later, November of 2017, the Court of Appeal added 9 years to make the total time served 15. And in South Africa, they just do whatever they want. It's like, oh, the judge said you're not guilty. Well, actually, you're guilty now. We sentence you to 6. Actually, 15. Sorry. Oops, actually, you're not guilty. Get out of jail. Now get back in there. You've got 100 years. Just joking. 1 day already served. Go home. But hey, unless we put you back in. This meant Pistorius was eligible for parole in 2023. And on March 13th of that year, it was denied. Finally, on January 5th of 2024, Pistorius was finally released on parole after serving 9 years in prison. Today, Pistorius lives a life out of the spotlight, as you could imagine, under parole at his Uncle Arnold's mansion. He'll stay there until at least 2029 under the conditions of his parole. There have been some sightings of Pistorius, however, at church, for example. There are also rumors of a new girlfriend who bears a striking resemblance to Steenkamp. He was also photographed in June of this year at an Ironman triathlon in Durban, which required consent from the parole authorities. And at the time of recording this video, he's 39 years old. No longer sponsored by multi-million-dollar companies, the sport itself seemed to quietly remove Pistorius from its history after the verdict. The International Paralympic Committee, after his conviction, emphasized the importance of separating Pistorius' contribution to the Paralympic community and his private life, which is an understatement. Kind of like when someone brings up how many rushing yards O.J. Simpson had in the NFL. Today, if Pistorius speaks to the media, he will be sent back to jail. In 2022, he met with Steenkamp's father, Barry, who at the time was age 79. This was part of a program that gives victims and their families a chance to confront offenders when considered for parole. After Barry died in 2023, Steenkamp's mother, June, and the rest of the family were left to serve the life sentence of losing Riva. With legal fees nearly bankrupting the Steenkamp family, they were forced to move. In early September of 2025, June suffered a stroke at her farm near Port Elizabeth and faces a difficult road to recovery. The perception and reality of Pistorius changed overnight, from a symbol of triumph to a portrait of a reckless, angry man. Society won't stop looking for role models, and greatness begets idolatry. But there's always a cost, a trade-off for success. We're taught from an early age that every choice has a consequence, and in this case, at least, they did. Whether accidental or intentional, he chose to fire blindly into that door. And now, two families will never be the same. I can't definitively say, like in my opinion, if I think he murdered her on purpose or not. Because if he did murder her on purpose, did he wait for her to go to the bathroom so he could stage it to look like a break-in? And there certainly are some things that imply it could have been an accident. Like, sure, she had food in her stomach, but maybe she just got up in the middle of the night, ate a snack, and then went to the bathroom. And the guy had a happy trigger finger for sure. So if he heard someone in the bathroom, who knows, he might have fired. Not that it would have been right for him to fire, again, he didn't ID the threat, but maybe not necessarily murder. But at the same time, there's so many other weird cases that make me feel like it was murder. Like, how did the neighbors hear someone screaming? Was that made up or coincidence? What was with the 24-second call he had with his estate manager? That's kind of strange. Regardless, he was reckless, and this poor girl lost her life because of it, if not intentionally homicidal. I think it's a very strange case that is all the more strange because it happened to such a renowned person. And with this connection, that reputation's been tarnished forever. Fittingly. Hopefully the knowledge that he will never live outside of her shadow is some comfort to the families who now have to live without her. And hopefully you all learned something, and I just want to say thank you for watching. Like I said, I remember hearing about Oscar Pistorius when he was an Olympic athlete, and then years later hearing that an Olympic athlete was in a murder case, and then when I connected the two, my brain broke. Let me know in the comments if you had a similar situation, if you found out about the case years later, or if you've never heard about any of this until now, or until the murder trial, so your entire knowledge of this guy was tainted from the get-go. That sounded really weird to say. Let me know in the comments. I feel like a total YouTuber animal now. It's like a disease, it's taking over. Everyone who made this video possible will be credited in the description. Be sure to show them some love as always. And I believe that should do it for now, but before I go, we just want to say thank you for watching. We hope that you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye! What happens if a judge in South Africa is like, I think that guy should get 1 million years? Does that guy just get 1 million years until another judge comes in and gives him like 1 year? I complain all the time about the jury system, but I think I see the problem without it now.